is there a membership goal for the, what is the year for the HRPTA? When does the year begin?
It's the calendar year.
Calendar year. So as we're thinking about next year, everybody starts moving to strategic planning. Is there a membership goal for next year? And is there a fundraising goal for next year?
Those are great questions. That's what this organization that's what we should be talking about.
Okay. If you'd like some, I actually have a pretty cool template for yearly strategic planning that it's business related. It would be a good place to start.
Can you catch me offline with that?
Yes.
Okay, let's grab lunch.
I'm sure we'll be having an executive committee between now and meeting, so.
A couple.
Present very soon.
Okay.
There may not be another general meeting until that time.
And I do have a projector I use for presentations if we needed to, so like using that wall or something like that, to put something up and move through that so everybody can see it.
Okay.
Or we can just hold it in my office. You know, and it's all right here, so.
Yeah.
If you want to.
great too.
Okay, Judith, was there anything else from the membership committee?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
And you know where we're going, and this will help tremendously to know where we're going.
Our goal this year, Dean, was to have some successful general membership meetings, which we had not done in the past. It had been just this, more formal business, and we wanted to open that up, open up what we do to the general public, and I think we've done a good job, and we're going to cap that off with Mitch Silver's annual meeting, which we'll get to later in the meeting.
This isn't quite fair, but we get a number of other ones.
I can only speak from my frame of reference. Okay. Legislative Committee, normally that's handled by Randy, who is out of town, but you said you had some items you wanted to share, Jerry?
Yes, the first off, and I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as possible, on the federal level, and some of you got an email from me with some of this on it. The House Transportation Infrastructure Committee debated possibly increasing the federal gas tax. That got killed by the Republicans. The MAP 21, which is something that I think some of us will have to look further into, is set to expire in September of next year. Senate Bill 1140 is the Transportation Service Delivery Advisory Committee for the state, which was established to advise VDRPT in the development of a distribution process for transit capital and operating funds, how the funds are distributed, funds for special programs, capital improvements, ride sharing. 25% of the funds shall be allocated to and distributed utilizing a tiered approach evaluated by the Transit Service Delivery Advisory Committee, and there's a specific way how it's set up. VTA is involved in the nomination process, as are several other organizations throughout the state. And then some of us did not know. And first of all, the House, I think it's the House, is already working on the 2014 transportation bill. They started just a couple days ago. Amtrak could face a funding loss. And they have one of the solutions they've been looking at, they've been trying to urge the individual state governors to provide more state funding for trains, like North Carolina funds the Carolinian. I think it's for Vermont that pays for the Ethan Allen Express. Rail services like that. But if that doesn't happen, we could end up losing some serious Amtrak service, except in the Northeast Corridor. So,
Did they give examples of how that would affect the state of Virginia?
it didn't say in the article that I did see on that, but it would impact a lot of rural communities. It would also impact a lot of long-distance trains like the Silver Service that runs from the Northeast down to Florida. The Hoosier, the Indiana Hoosier line, which runs from Indianapolis to Chicago, would be cut. The Cardinal might be cut, which I think is from Washington to Chicago.
I think the group would be interested to hear, like, next meeting,
Yes.
if there's any risk to our 6 regional trains.
And I'm gonna keep as much on top of that as
Love it.
possible. The other thing is that there's the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration have proposed some streamlining rules to the NEPA process, which we just talked about, which could impact, it could impact certain things such as the light rail project in the future. I didn't get this one I pulled up yesterday, so I didn't get to. I got to look at some of it, but it's a very, very short article, and I can email them to you if you would like.
Just give us a synopsis.
Okay.
Of what you've got
if
prepared.
anybody wants to know what the MAP 21 is that I mentioned earlier, I can email the much larger details to everyone once I get to work. The broad outlines of this rule were mandated by Congress in its most recent transportation bill, which was the MAP 21, but specifics were uncertain until September 23rd, which was yesterday. It also authorized the FHWA to enter into certain programmatic streamlining agreements with state departments of transportation, including agreements which would enhance the agency's ability to regulate to state Department of Transportation's the authority to implement the federal categorical exclusions.
Brian, I want to be involved in this, but I personally find it just overwhelming, all these rules and things. We really need guidance on this, and when you're in touch with this, you know what's going on. Please let us know where we can make a difference.
And one final thing, and I shared this just with Judith and Asa and Michael yesterday. It's only in its beginning stages. Since the transportation bill is already being worked on, I thought that maybe each one of us, or as a group, we could send a letter to our senators and our Congress people on why transportation is important to us and why we should actually have more funding instead of risking slashing it, which would include Amtrak. And I would like to know what happened to the MAX survey.
What happened to Max survey?
Yes, Keith and I, and technically Asa too.
Is that through HRT?
I don't.
No, that was supposed to be endorsed through us.
Oh, okay.
I started it.
Right.
Keith and Asa helped me along with it.
I don't have details on this.
Right.
As far as the legislative bill, I can bring in, and I think, Gary's touching some really significant points. What may be helpful, later this week, actually, on Thursday, our board will be considering, the draft legislative agenda for, or priorities, I guess I should say, for 2014. So, and they touch these points, MAP 21 is a big deal. That is the existing transportation authorization bill that expires in September of next year. So Congress really needs to work on a reauthorization bill. But in tandem with that, and what makes it different this time around maybe than in the past, Congress has been able to get away with doing these continuing resolutions and kind of kicking the can down the road, so to speak. That's not the case with MAP 21 this time around because of the pending insolvency of the Highway Trust Fund, which it so happens
that, you know, in September of next year, when MAP 21 expires, that's also the point at which there would be just deficit spending. You know, the Highway Trust Fund will be bankrupt. So Congress has got a huge task in front of it to, among all the other things they're debating, from Syria to, you know, you name it, they need to find a solution to fund, and the gas tax is, you know, as we all know, is not as meaningful as it was. And so, you know, there's going to have to be some way for sustainable funding for the Highway Trust Fund, which is where, you know, transit gets funded out of those revenues as well. So, or the Transportation Trust Fund, I should say. So it is a big deal, MAP 21, and that's also in our legislative priorities to urge Congress in that direction. On the local level and the state and local level, yes, you know, you mentioned SB 1140 and this committee that has been meeting. They've met, I guess, 11 times since April. We've been very engaged on that. If you visit DRPT's website, they've been doing a great job of posting information there. The acronym is TISDAC, the TISDAC committee. And so you'll see a lot of good information there at DRPT's website. But the short of it is, this new money that has come in from this HB 2313 for statewide revenues, the allocation of that is going to be based on certain performance measures. That's what this whole thing is about. And so they've identified these 3 performance measures: you know, customers per hour, customers per mile, and net cost per passenger. And it just so happens the way, you know, they're getting ready to roll this out. We're actually performing better than any urban transit system in the Commonwealth when you look across these 3 measures. And we're actually better than most transit agencies, rural and urban, across Virginia. So, but that being said, so HRT and the region, Suffolk Transit and WADA, Williamsburg Area Transit, we're going to win some new. I say win. I think that's the way I see it. We will win some new revenue from the statewide funding, but nobody should be fooled to believe that HB 2313, in particular because it excluded transit as an eligible expense for the regional portion of funding. Nobody should be in any way imagine that the funding that's in place today, or even these new fundings, is going to be enough to maintain service levels or expand transit, much less to what the public says they want. So, as with most things, at the end of the day, it boils down to money. There's not enough funding to provide the kind of transit system that the public is saying more and more that it wants in this region. So I would say that's the number one issue. You know, it's been the number one issue historically, right, Sandra? I mean, is how many, right, talking about dedicated funding for transit in Hampton Roads. That is the policy issue more than anything that's going to matter. You know, just to give you an idea of what, you know, the scope and scale of that in terms of the new money that's coming in from the state. So probably it's statewide is about $56 million in new revenue statewide that's going to be available for operating. Well, by the time you back out a lesser baseline allocation for the current fiscal year, and then also the fact that under MAP 21, we actually have lost some of our federal formula funding. So by the time you account for those, and we bring in the additional new state money, you know, the net benefit for transit in Hampton Roads is probably going to be like $3 million or something. So it's something to really to work on moving forward, and it's a heavy lift. It's absolutely a heavy lift. It's even heavier because we always felt that in order to get the funding that's going to be needed, we were going to have to be part of a broader regional package. You know, transit would never be able to kind of stand on its own, and here we are. The broader regional package has come, and transit was specifically excluded. So it's that much more of a heavy lift, but maybe that's a blessing in disguise. You know, the contrast is very, very evident now. You know, transit is not being invested in a way that reflects.
Why?
Well, we just haven't convinced the people that we need to convince. You know, there are policymakers. We need to influence those policymakers. That's obviously key. My personal opinion is that's something that has to happen as an absolute case, because you're not gonna, you know, if the policymakers aren't on board, you're not gonna advance it. But my opinion is that in order to make that happen, in tandem with that, there's going to have